Live? Are we there? Oh, you know what? Headphones. Headphones. And we're gonna need our headphones. Are we good to go? I think so. Let me pull up our show. How's it going, everybody? Great to see you guys. Great to see everybody. Looks like we're live on YouTube. I imagine we're live on Facebook as well. If you're there, welcome to the chat. I'm getting everything set up and ready to go. Today's going to be a great show. By the way, we have a friend. We have a visitor for our show. It's a little fly I've been trying to kill all day, and I have failed at taking dominion over this flies. So maybe somebody in the chat can make up a name for this guy, because he's definitely going to be our visitor. I have not been able to take dominion over this creature all day long. It has just not happened. It has not happened. But anyway, hey guys, while you're there, feel free to share the show. Get everything, get comfortable. I have a nice, as Chris Roseborough from Pirate Christian Radio says, I have my wife is apparently cooking. The fire alarm. So it's going to be a fun show. We're going to be talking about media and just sort of the lies that are being exposed right now. And anyway, someone in the chat can make a name for the fly. He will be our guest. And then also, as Chris Roseborough from Pirate Christian Radio says, feel free to grab an adult beverage. I have. And we will get this show on the road. So let's go ahead.
When a government can confiscate the earnings of the people with no restraint or no limit whatsoever on the amount that government takes, then government has become the master.
Didn't you say that all services were worth at least $5.15, and here there is a service that's being rendered to you personally, which you are not compensating at all?
No, I said to you earlier, unless someone decides that they want to volunteer.
During the election, all this enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders was taking place while people in Venezuela, under a socialist government, were starving. They were breaking into grocery stores to get desperate to get food.
Regulations.
Some regulations.
Regulation.
What do you think should be the proper income tax rate?
Well, the best would be 0.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Law and Profits here on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. I'm your host, King Ginger. And it is great to finally speak to you guys again on the live streams. Thanks to everybody that's in the YouTube, and if you're on Facebook, thanks for watching as well. Please be sure to share the show, and be sure to sign up for the Fight Laugh Feast Club membership. There's a lot of great stuff on there, a lot of really good stuff. I heard George Grant has a show on there now. A lot of great stuff on there. If you join the Fight Laugh Feast Network, you can tune in and check everything out. Really great stuff. Make sure though that you use the code LAP when you join, and that way I get credit and people know you're actually listening to my show. We are doing this. I am committed to doing this show routinely now, so we shall see how this goes. I hope everybody is having a great day. There is a lot of stuff going on right now in the media landscape, for sure. A lot of stuff you're not allowed to talk about. A lot of stuff you're not allowed to talk about because you will be canceled almost immediately. But there's a lot of important things that we need to talk about. So in the event that I do get canceled, please be sure to subscribe right down here on Rumble right there. And I would really like to build that platform up. It seems like a really great platform. It is strange to find that it does seem more difficult to find the people you subscribe to on Rumble, and their user interface is really not that great. But I'm hoping that they'll work those kinks out, or even better, maybe Gab will start to do live streaming, which, by the way, I've found a lot of success on. That it is the worst fly, I'm telling you. It flies right in your eyeball. And he doesn't stop. He doesn't stop. He doesn't rest. He is just consistent little pest. But anyway, I'll try to ignore him as much as I can. But I have a feeling he's going to be an acquaintance on the show. So anyways, there is a lot going on that I wanted to talk about. The first thing I wanted to talk about is Dave Chappelle, the one and only Dave Chappelle. And this guy did his 5th special. If you guys remember, he did 5 comedy specials on Netflix. And his last one was called The Closer. And in that special, he really went into the trans community. He really dived in really hard against cancel culture in general. And the cancel culture that he was going after, I think, well, I think what he was trying to say was that cancel culture is a bad thing. And of course, the proponents of cancel culture, like the transvestites and those sort of things, were not too happy about that. They didn't really appreciate it much at all. And I don't want to play any clips from the special because I don't want to get flagged for copyright infringement. But if you did watch it, it's particularly devastating to the trans community. I would say, at least the Twitter mob community, more specifically, probably that. In it, he goes on to essentially tell a story of this friend that he had who was a comedian named Daphne, a transvestite, and this comedian would always laugh at his jokes that the Twitter mob would rage against. And they became good friends. And spoiler warning, by the way, I'm going to tell you exactly what goes down. But they became really good friends. She actually opened up for him at one of his Netflix shows. And the result of that was she got demolished on Twitter, and she was a victim of the cancel mob and eventually jumped off a building and killed herself. Really, and Dave doesn't say it, but he definitely implies it, that the trans community and the outrage in Twitter mobs is what led to Daphne's death and suicide. And so it was really, really powerful storytelling time. It wasn't like a typical comedy special. He was telling a story throughout a good most of the show. And I think that the fact that Netflix even let that air is impressive. I'm shocked about it. But you know, we were debating at Lore. We were kind of debating sort of like what Netflix's response is going to, like, what are they going to do? Because they have to dive in. Like, they can't cancel Dave Chappelle. They paid the guy 50. Hold on. Here we go. I don't know if I got him. I hope I got him. That was the first time he rested. He rested right there on my microphone. Anyway, they paid Dave Chappelle $50 million to do 5 specials, which, by the way, is the same number that Comedy Central paid him to do the Chappelle show before he backed out of that. And so, he paid. Is that fly? That fly is so distracting. I did try to kill it before I went live, and then I gave up. Anyway, so they paid him $50 million. They paid him $50 million. Comedy Central paid him $50 million for the show, but he canceled and pulled out of that. And then you have $50 million being paid by Netflix, and then they released the special where, and just if you have any kids nearby, you might not want to hear this. I won't be as crass as he was, but he compared transvestite body parts to that of Beyond Meat and Impossible Meat. where it might look like the real thing, but it's not the real thing. My jaw dropped when he said that. I knew there was going to be. I was like, oh, he's toast. He's toast. But so the interesting thing is, well, what's the reaction from Netflix? Like, what is Netflix going to do about that? I mean, one, they obviously know about it because they released it. It didn't take them by surprise. It wasn't a live comedy special where they didn't have any say over. It was pre-recorded. It was done probably several months ago. And Netflix had, I did not get them. Netflix had tons of time to be able to review this. And they eventually came up to the conclusion that they're going to release it. And I don't know how much of a discussion was had prior to that, but I do know that it caused a lot of backlash, so much so that there were 3 employees that stormed an executive meeting to protest the show being on the air, which didn't go over well for them, by the way. Apparently, Netflix doesn't like it when you storm executive meetings, and they were suspended. There was another employee that did a long Twitter thread about how terrible Netflix was for releasing the special and all the harm and damage it's going to do. This article today from The Hill released a company memo where an email from Ted Sarandos. Ted Sarandos, by the way, was Netflix's chief content officer for several years. He's the guy that paid $100 million for House of Cards and pretty much spent all of Netflix's original content budget on one show. He took that risk and it paid off well. So now he's operating as the co-CEO of Netflix. And let's see if this article comes up. Okay, this is from The Hill. It says, the head of Netflix is taking heat for repeatedly defending Dave Chappelle's controversial special, saying that the company believes that transphobic remarks by the comedian won't result in real-world harm. Now, I want you to pay attention to that real-world harm. Ted Sarandos, CEO of Netflix, sent a company-wide memo this week addressing the controversy over The Closer, Variety reported on Wednesday. We know that a number of you have been left angry, disappointed, and hurt by our decision to put Dave Chappelle's latest special on Netflix. With The Closer, we understand that the concern is not about offensive to some content, but titles which could increase real-world harm, such as further marginalizing already marginalized groups, hate, violence, etc., he said. Last year, we had similar concerns about 365 days and violence against women. While some employees disagree, we've had a strong belief that content on screen doesn't directly translate to real-world harm. I want you to just think about that for a minute, what they're saying there. They're saying that what we put on the screen does not translate to real-world harm. Here's the problem with this. The problem with this is that it's not true. Pornography on the screen leads to real-world harm. This was a lot of their concern, a lot of the outrage over cuties was that, yes, it was happening on screen, but it was a film about not sexualizing children that actually sexualized children. So what was happening on screen did actually result in real-world harm, right? So here's the thing. Now, I'm not attacking Dave Chappelle. I think what Dave Chappelle said is right. I think his special was, I don't know if I would say what he said was right, but I would say that his jokes were good, and they should be allowed in our world without trying to cancel people. But anyway, but the idea that Netflix can just say, well, anything we do doesn't translate to real world harm, it's just not true. And Netflix knows this. And the reason that Netflix knows this 100% without a shadow of a doubt, and this is live from Ted Sarandos, is because Netflix knows that media is powerful. And they know that media is powerful. And one of the ways we know that media is powerful is because they ban Christian content. They put in trans characters or homosexual characters, and then, of course, this eventually gets passed down to law. Now, one of our our chief content officer, Jason Farley, has said really eloquently, perhaps more eloquently than I could, about how stories are the mechanism that create laws. And stories are the mechanism in which God uses to get people to follow his laws. So there's not a presentation of law in the Old Testament that's not encompassed somehow in a story. The entire Bible is a narrative work. It is a story from Genesis to Revelation about that Christ is coming, that he came, and that he's sitting at the right hand of God, making all enemies his footstool. That's the whole narrative of Scripture, is the redemption of the world through Jesus Christ. But in the midst of that story, you have laws. And so this brings me to this point down here. I want you to think about how powerful this is. Now, we talk about how the God doesn't give us laws unless they're encased in stories. Authentic media stories about LGBTQ lives have been cited as directly responsible for increasing public support for issues like marriage equality. But film and TV have also been filmed with stereotypes and misinformation about us for decades, leading to real-world harm, especially for trans people and LGBTQ people of color. So here you have from GLAAD. Now this is the gay, lesbian, something. It's GLAAD. It's a liberal activist group. But anyway, so authentic media stories about LGBTQ lives have been cited as directly responsible for increasing public support for issues like marriage equality. Do you guys understand why media is so important? The reason they're putting your random gay character into your favorite story, the reason they're putting in these narratives of the you can't watch This Is Us without one of the kids' daughters turning out to be gay, one of the main cast daughters turning out to be gay, because they know that they have to have stories that help influence the public discord on these issues. And after about 10 years of seeing homosexuals on screen like normal, and portrayed as normal, eventually you get laws. Congress makes laws. And so it's the storytellers of our generation that really help influence these sort of things. And they know this. These are the things that really change a culture's mindset. This is why who your kid's teacher is so important. The stories your children hear for 8 hours a day. Are they stories that are wrapped up in a Christian worldview, or are they stories that are used to impose a form of humanism? And that's the issue at hand. And so when you have Dave Chappelle doing a special like this, it creates this weird predicament for Netflix. It creates this strange situation where now they have to go and say, well, hey, now, the stories on the screen don't cause real-world harm. Unless, of course, that real-world harm is the nation coming to embrace homosexual marriage. Well, that's not. So there can't be any real-world harm. The only thing movies and TV shows can do is do good, right? That's all they can do. They can never be responsible for harm. And so, again, I'm not defending cancel culture's attack on Dave Chappelle. I think I think Netflix is absolutely wrong about this, and this exposes their lie. When even GLAAD has to come out and say, well, no, wait a minute. We know that media portrayals of homosexuals and the LGBTQ and the trans community, we know that does have an effect that we like. But it can only be used for one thing. And that's to push our agenda. If it pushes anybody else's agenda, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. So I just found that really interesting. I wrote a blog about that today for Lore, and it's one of the reasons why Lore is so important, why what we're doing is so important, is we're creating a storytelling place where people can tell stories that matter to them. And so let's get into another one of the media's lies. This time, of course, was Joe Rogan on Sanjay Gupta on Joe Rogan. And this is, there he is. See him? See him? I can't. All right, maybe by the end of the show. All right, let's go to this. This is Joe Rogan on Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay Gupta on Joe Rogan, and talk. Why? First off, before we even play this clip, what was he thinking? What was he thinking? How could he have? Did he think that this was going to go over well for him? Because he must have. He must live in this elite media bubble where he thinks he's just completely untouchable. But the fact that this guy sat down with Joe Rogan for 3.5 hours and was able to get away with what is happening here is absolutely incredible. Let's play this clip. And I'll stop and do commentary as we go.
What? But so for you, Joe Rogan.
Yes.
I would say you've had it.
Yes.
So now get one shot of the vaccine.
No.
Why not?
Because I have better immunity than I would if I was vaccinated. Right?
Yes.
Don't I?
I think your immunity is really good.
So why, if I've already gotten through COVID and I was really only sick for a day, and then 5 days later I was negative, and I do have the natural antibodies now, why would I take a chance in getting vaccinated on top of that?
By the way, I'm glad you're better. I'm glad it only lasted a day.
You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad.
No. We're not.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. And we should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you too.
Okay, he stepped into it. Joe Rogan was waiting for this all day long. He's waiting for this, and the opportunity presented himself, and just like a fighter, he did that right hook. look at his face right there. He's been waiting for that moment. Here we go.
Lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing. That's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah,
they're unfaithful.
Yeah, it's there's so many legal consequences from this clip that Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was ready because he already threatened to sue CNN over this. And here's Sanjay Gupta saying yes, yes, it was bad. And it just gets worse and worse. And you know that after this, Sanjay Gupta had to text. What Zucker? Jeff Zucker? Is he still head of CNN, or did he get whoever the head of CNN is? I imagine it's Jeff Zucker, but if it's not, whoever that head of CNN is, they got a text message after this, hey. We're going to have to talk about this on our show. We're going to have to fill airtimes and defend CNN's reputation. And Jeff Zucker was probably like, I told you not to go on that show. I told you not to do it. Anyway, here we go.
Favorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Well, the FDA put this thing out. You saw that. Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, you are not a horse, you are not a cow, stop taking this stuff, or something like that.
Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the
Nobel Prize
in 2015?
Yeah.
No, a drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro.
Now, I know that Sanjay Gupta has never been in the context of a show where you have to keep defending you don't have a 2-minute segment. You can't just cut the mic off on Joe Rogan. Like that just can't happen. And so here he is on a 3-hour long form talk show where he has to defend himself, and there's no help. There's no in-ear monitor, right? There's no IEM. There's nothing in his ear. There's nobody talking to him. There's no one giving him data points in his ear. That like he is completely on his own, and his own logic and reason is complete. It's Joe. It's this uneducated stand-up comic UFC fighter who has a YouTube show or a Spotify show now, but a podcast, right? Like that's what Big Eva goes. It's a podcast, right? So he's this guy with a podcast. He's on, and he has nowhere to run. He has nowhere to go. This guy's got to defend himself, and he has not been brought down out of his ivory tower. And you can tell he's completely unprepared for this, which is insane. You'd think he would for sure be prepared for this question, seeing that Joe Rogan made such a big deal about it. But boy, this is this is a boxing match gone really wrong.
You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, motherfucker. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine. Like, here it is.
Real quick. The position that Sanjay Gupta is in right now, to have to, if he speaks honestly, he destroys his entire network, and he will be without a job. And of course, that is not an option. So just be thinking like he is squirming. Look at him. He is so uncomfortable and tense right now.
You got it with
right
you.
Here. Somebody gave it to me.
All right, hang on. I see. The thing is, we're like going so fast. Like I feel.
Do you ever see him stutter like that on CNN when he's in a 2-minute bit? When he's a guest speaker or when he's on his own show, do you ever go He knows he's been called out. He knows he's in a position right now with no help, and it's absolutely incredible.
I feel like I'm missing.
Do you think that's a problem, that your news network lies?
Well, I don't.
Dude,
what did they say?
They lied.
What did they say?
What did they say?
Horse dewormer.
You've been talking for the past 2 minutes about exactly what he said. What did they say? What did they say? He's been talking. He's trying to like buy time. He's in the. I'm not much of a boxer, analyzer, but he's like just waiting for the bell. He's like in the corner, just on the ropes, and he's just trying to get time to catch his breath for a minute. And Joe Rogan is not. I love this clip so much.
First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
they
with
shouldn't have said it was
a bunch of other medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that. Ivermectin can be a very effective medication for parasitic disease, and as you say, it's probably, I think 250 million people have taken it around the world.
More,
I get that.
Way more.
So
way more. Billions of people have taken it.
Can I just come back to the one I want to talk about?
No,
two things on
you
the
have
ledger.
You have.
Can you just let me get off the ropes, Joe? let me get off the ropes. Joe Rogan is like, no. You're not there's no one in your ear to cut the commercial. You're not cutting the commercial on this, man. This is fantastic. This is fantastic television. By the way, this clip, it's on some random channel, by the way, with like 629 subscribers. It already has more views than most of CNN's programming during prime time. But anyway, so
before we get to that,
look at the smile. Look on the smile on his face, dude. He's so smug because he knows he's got him, and the guy's not going anywhere.
Bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before.
But they did it with such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
they did. I watched.
You watched?
I watched.
You watched? No, I don't think there's
Yes,
glee.
they did.
No one takes.
Joe Rogan says he has COVID, taking livestock drug despite warnings. Yeah,
he's got the clip ready to go. This is just great, guys. This is fantastic.
He had to pull this up.
You want to play it?
Yeah, to pull
this
this
is
up.
your news network.
I'm going to watch.
Let's see.
I'm going to watch.
Rogan telling his 13 million Instagram followers that he was treated with several drugs, and he included ivermectin on the list, a drug used for livestock. The FDA and the CDC warn against using to treat COVID.
Turns out I got COVID.
Look at they put a yellow filter on me
threw
too.
the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds. Monoclonal
You see the original
antibodies,
video versus that? I look like shit there.
ivermectin,
Do you know that?
I think you look good.
Pause. It's enough.
prednisone.
That's enough, Jimmy.
I don't think Aaron had glee.
Oh, well, it's more Brian Stelter was the gleeful one. But the point is,
He called him out for the coloring of the video and everything too. Anyways, this is just a fantastic segment, and it just goes to show just how the media is just so insanely falsified. It's incredible, and that they can't compete with a 3-hour-long podcast. The media format is just like, these guys are so out of their league when they go on a long form conversation that it's incredible. Now, I want to just show you how CNN. This is what I think Sanjay Gupta was on pretty much every CNN show today, doing doing some sort of protection, trying to save his face. But anyway, I want to play this right here. This is actual CNN. We won't play this whole thing, but this is incredible. Now, watch what we just saw. Right, we saw Joe Rogan just completely smash Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and woo.
Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, sat down for a 3-hour one-on-one with controversial podcast host Joe Rogan last night. Rogan remains a vaccine skeptic despite having caught COVID-19 himself. Let's listen to part of this.
So would you now, with what you know now, and having had COVID, would you have wished that you had been vaccinated beforehand?
But I got
you almost
through
got
it.
vaccinated.
Yeah, but I explained
you got
all that.
through it.
But I got through COVID.
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that was my thought was, I'm a healthy person. I exercise constantly. I'm always taking vitamins.
By the way, they do not show that clip that we just watched on CNN, by the way, about the horse dewormer. That is not shown here. But
I take care of myself. I felt like I was going to be okay, and that was true. It was correct. I'm happy I got through it. I don't wish it upon anyone. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't the worst cold I've ever had, and I got over it fairly quickly, relatively speaking.
I think that, and again, I am truly glad about that. I'm not, all kidding aside, I don't think anybody wishes you.
By the way, I like how they just play this really long clip to act like they're showing everything in context that happened, and that they can't be called out for malicious editing or anything like that. That's why it's a really long clip. But it is one of the most boring clips over the course of this entire podcast.
Everyone wants you to be well and healthy. But I think the question is just in terms of the nuance of this. It's not a strategy to recommend people get infected.
I'm not recommending anybody get infected.
So they should get vaccinated.
I think a lot of people should get vaccinated.
You're talking,
I think
a lot of vulnerable people.
Yeah.
If you just said vulnerable people, there'd be a lot
older
of people.
Fat people, I think a lot of those folks. My real concern is this urge to vaccinate children. And I don't know what kind of data we have on the long-term effects of this.
That was an interesting time to just cut it off, because he actually spoke about how scary it is to take a vex with very little knowledge of long-term consequences. And that was an interesting segment that they just happened to cut off, obviously, right before that. But I want you to just watch how they respond to this.
All right. With us now Sanjay, first off, I mean, I'm so glad you did this because there's so many people who can listen to the sense that you make. Tell us why you thought this was so important.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, I think the media landscape's pretty segmented, as we know, and I think there's a lot of people who listen on CNN who are accepting and hearing these messages and understanding the science. But I wanted to go to
just for the record, there's not a lot of people listening on CNN. By the way, it's just not. You can look at their ratings and see that it's not a lot of people.
Place where there was clearly he has a big audience and
he has a much bigger audience than CNN. This needs to be stated that Dr. Sanjay Gupta didn't get nearly $1 billion deal for his show, but Joe Rogan did. That is because there's a lot of people that watch Joe Rogan. It's because it's not that Joe Rogan is some sort of conservative hero. He's not. It's not that Joe Rogan is some sort of Christian hero. He's not. He's not conservative. He's not a Christian. He's outright atheist. By the way, Doug Wilson did a really great Doug Responds to Joe Rogan trying to attack Christianity. It was fantastic. You should watch that on Canon Press. But anyway, the Joe Rogan's microphone is way bigger than CNN's. It just is. There's more people that watch it. There's more people that actually trust Joe Rogan, which is probably a bigger deal than people that actually watch CNN. So even if CNN has a larger international market, I guarantee you that the people that watch Joe Rogan take Joe Rogan a lot more seriously.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's been a skeptic of the vaccines. I listened to his podcast. I thought there could be some common ground there and decided, to lean into the nuance for 3 hours, which, by the way, is a long time to talk to anybody. I don't know that I've talked to anybody, no breaks, no distractions, no phones for 3 hours before.
That's my favorite part. Guys, it was 3 hours. I mean, I had to talk to him for 3 hours. There was no breaks. There's no distractions. There's nobody in my ear letting me cut to commercial when things get uncomfortable. I couldn't just call the producer and say, cut his mic. The satellite couldn't just randomly fail for some strange reason when things were getting really intense. I was just there all by myself for 3 hours, and it was just like my intellect against a UFC boxer, cage match guy, and a stand-up comedian. For 3 hours. Could you guys go up against the stand-up comedian for 3 hours? Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how smart those stand-up comedians are? They're really smart, actually.
But I think that's how you get at some of these real conversations.
Look, we talk to you for 3 hours, but they're always trying to wrap us. Always after the second question, Sanjay. I do want to...
By the way, notice this is Dr. Gupta goes into, quote, Lion's Den to talk with skeptic Joe Rogan. Unbelievable.
To play another exchange you had with him. You heard him talk about vaccines and kids there. This is another exchange you had on that.
And, myocarditis can be a really frightening thing. They can develop chest pain, shortness of breath, things like that.
It's inflammation of the heart.
That's what it is. And you got to think of it like this. The reason it can happen in young people, it can happen in anybody, but people who have really robust immune response. You're basically giving the vaccine and you're counting on the immune system to really respond to that. If it responds a lot in someone with a really healthy immune system, it can cause more widespread inflammation. People feel miserable for a day or two, and in this case, it can cause inflammation around the heart.
Do we know what the long-term consequences of myocarditis in young people that comes from the vaccine are?
I don't think we don't know. And I think the only way we can know long-term things, to be perfectly honest, of any of these aspects of the vaccine, the only way we can know long-term stuff is with the passage of time, for certain.
That's terrifying for parents.
It is.
The idea that your son could get vaccinated and most likely he would have been fine if he got COVID, and that your son could catch myocarditis and have permanent heart problems.
I don't know that we can say the person will be fine if they get COVID, Joe.
A young boy?
Well,
most young boys with no
when you
comorbidities.
Say fine, you mean what?
Anyways, it just goes on like that. This is how the media has to recover from a podcaster. The media has to recover from a podcaster. Talk about the power of free speech. I mean, Joe Rogan started on YouTube just doing YouTube videos, interviewing people, and he's become a sensation because, one, he's really brilliant, and two, I think he's probably the closest to Larry King that we have. And I think, I mean, Larry King is another level as well, but Joe Rogan's a completely different format, so I don't think those two can be compared in that sense over who's better. They're just two completely different formats. But Joe Rogan is the guy people go to because they trust him. Even if they don't agree with him, they trust him. They at least believe that this guy's being honest with what he believes. But when you look at CNN, you don't think these guys are being honest. These guys are telling us the truth. It's just not happening. It's just not happening. And so I just think this is an incredible, just this with Dave Chappelle, and you just see that the media knows that they have power. The media knows that they're controlling a narrative, and they don't like formats and people that challenge that. Dave Chappelle is challenging the narrative on the trans community and the cancel mob. And then you have Joe Rogan who's challenging the narrative on the vaccine. And this is a problem. It is a problem because our country is still under this idea that free speech is to some degree important. So they have to do this balancing act of pretending like they're in favor of free speech and appearing on shows like Joe Rogan and then putting out specials like Dave Chappelle. And it just creates this problem. And the only solution to this problem is to do what Zuckerberg's doing and begging the government to restrict it for us. Because we don't want to have that burden of being a socialist. We don't want to have that burden of being a communist. So please, government, pass legislation that forces regulation. That way we don't have to do it. Right? And this is what they want. Right? This is why you have hate speech laws. This is why you have platforms like Gab being built. And like Lore being built, where people have more freedom to tell the stories and say the things that they want to say. And it's going to cause a problem. It's going to come to a head. It's not going to last forever. They will shut down Gab. They will shut down all these institutions. They will not tolerate it. And unless we humble ourselves and repent and trust to Christ, it's going to get worse. As a nation, it's going to get worse. And again, I'm past the point of arguing COVID stats. I don't think there's any purpose in that anymore, because I think it's so obvious that certain things don't work and certain things do work. That I think when you argue it with people who don't have the ability to use basic logic because they're under judgment of God, I think you're wasting your time. Romans 1 is very clear with this, and I think I think that's sort of what we're seeing. We're seeing our nation collapse under the judgment of not discipling our children, raising them in government schools because they're missionaries. And it's just children have been the worst missionary, the worst missionary outreach in the history of the world was parents sending their kids to government schools to be missionaries. It's the biggest failure of any missionary movement in the history of the world, in the history of Christianity. I said it. Yes. Send your Christian kids to school to be missionaries is the biggest failure of the modern missionary movement in the history of the entire world. Not just the modern one. The entire world. That one failed. And we're seeing the fruits of that failure right now. So, I mean, what more is there to say on this issue? Here you see just the ultimate power of media being recognized from Dave Chappelle. And then you see this sort of inability to even appear as honest when you're given 3 hours nonstop to talk about what you believe in. And it's a sad thing. And so I just want to see if I can find it real quick. But I thought this was kind of interesting. So let me, Russell, it's Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore, see if I can pull this tweet up. It might not be the retweet that I saw. Here we go. Russell Moore. In this new episode, David A. French and I talk navigating craziness in politics and church, if USA's headed for civil war, and whether our friendship can survive the Snyder Cut. Whoever you get podcast wherever you get your podcast, or at your local library's Born Again Story Hour. Ha ha! You're so funny, Dr. Moore. There was a quote tweet though that I thought was really interesting. Hopefully, I can find it. A lot of good ones. Yeah, I can't find it. But I was hoping it was that one, but it's not. But anyway, I was talking about how, oh, you know what? I actually retweeted it. See if it'll come up. I'll see if I can find it. I don't know where it is. I don't know where it is. Anyways, it was talking about how refreshing it is to see two people in a podcast being able to talk to each other even though they disagree. And Russell Moore was talking about this like it's a good thing. And my only thought was, well, why don't you have Doug Wilson on your show? Why don't you have Tom Askell on your show? Why don't Rod Martin and Russell Moore? Why doesn't Russell Moore invite Rod Martin to come on his podcast, or Doug Wilson, or all these other people that he so strongly disagrees with? And it's because really David A. French and Russell Moore don't disagree, and they're putting all this delusion of we're coming together to argue and disagree on matters because look how relatable we are. And it's like, you're not relatable. And every one of those questions that you probably asked on your show was absolutely scripted, and they knew about it well in advance. And the reason I know is because Russell Moore, when we tried to get him on the show at Apologia, wanted his questions in advance. So I know that Russell Moore doesn't do anything without having his scripts in advance. And when he does, by the way, when he does try to do something improvised, you get really weird photoshopped baby pictures from Beth Moore, or you get really weird library tours. Like, these people don't know how to be relatable outside of what they're told. And so this is how you know Russell Moore's podcast is not a real podcast, because he won't have people that legitimately disagree with him on his show, because he's a coward. And yeah, I said it. He's a coward. So anyways, I think that about does it. If anybody wants to call in and join the Discord, there's a link I will share right now. And you guys can enter the Discord and let's see if anybody watched on Rumble. There's 3 people watching on Rumble, but I don't get the chat for Rumble. I see you guys did post comments on Rumble, but there's a chat window that's called Rumble Rants that's always empty, so I never think I'm getting chats or anybody's watching on Rumble whatsoever. Johnny Angel said it's not a fly, it's a CIA or NSA drone. It's probably true, because it is way too quick to be a fly. But the battery life in that thing is incredible, man. I wish they'd at least make that not top secret technology. So let's see. I'll get the link, and I'll post the link to the Discord. And if anybody wants to join the Discord, you guys absolutely can. And then I'll take live calls. Post it in YouTube, and I'll post it on Facebook and that. And so that's the link to the Discord. Feel free to join. We could do a live video call. It'd be fun. If you're in the Discord, just go enter the call-in request and say that you would like to be a part of it, and we'll go from there. Sorry for that fly. Trust me, I tried to kill that fly before the show started, and I just gave up because I told everybody I was going to do it at 6, and I didn't want to spend 3 hours acting like the robbers in Home Alone trying to catch this fly. That's what I felt like. Anyways, if you want a video chat with me, if you want to come into the live, do the live show, and be on, talk, whether it's about this show or whatever, feel free, join, and we can have a discussion. If not, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys for sharing and promoting the show. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for subscribing on Rumble. And again, everybody else, thank you for joining the Fight Laugh Feast Network, and we'll see you next time. I needed to put that close in there while I wait for people to join. But sorry guys, I was kind of into that. I wasn't really paying attention to the comments. Somebody said, where's Joe Rogan's podcast located? It's located on Spotify. You know, I haven't honestly really even paid attention much to Joe Rogan's podcast since it went to Spotify, because I just don't use Spotify. It's not where I go when I think of watching videos, which is interesting. But I imagine Joe Rogan's getting plenty of bandwidth, even though I didn't follow him from YouTube. Eric says it's like that Breaking Bad episode. I know exactly which one, The Fly. I remember watching that and thinking they ran out of ideas and needed a filler episode to fulfill AMC's episode requirements. I saw that episode, I was like, yeah, they were just trying to fill an episode at a time. But yeah, I remember that. That was a great episode. It's amazing they can even fill time and make great television. Those guys. So, I don't know, like live stream fly swatting should be a thing, don't you think? Or it's just a live stream of a guy trying to kill a fly in his office during a live show. That's it. Million Twitch subscribers. Oh, man. Anyways, doesn't look like anybody's joining the Discord. But anyway, thanks everybody so much for watching and joining and being part of the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Oh, real quick, if you're still listening, be sure to go to AmericanVision.com and get Benjamin Morris's the life and character of the civil institutions of the Christian life and character of the civil institutions of the United States of America. I forget, but I'm sure if you just type in Benjamin Morris and a few of those words, it'll come up on Google. But go to American Vision, because they actually have a good type copy version, whereas like the ones on Amazon are like there's like random images and artifacts in between words, and it was really hard to read. I couldn't even get through like 1 or 2 pages. on the free versions. So American Vision went and made an actual decent version of it, where the type is perfect. It's perfectly translated. And I think it's $35 for the hardback copy and then $15 for the PDF. I got the PDF. But if you just read the introduction, and you just read that, knowing that it was written in 1863 and it was not written yesterday, that grieved me. Because I think it shows just the decline America has been on since the 1860s. And we're just now seeing God's patience and forbearance sort of be lifted on our nation. And he's starting to bring us into an incredible amount of judgment. But to think that it lasted, let's see, 1860, 1960, almost 200 years, really, 240 years, 100 and, I'm the worst at math, nearly 200 years that it lasted, but the way he talks about how the children have been given over to humanistic teaching, and how the lower class of people, the lower uneducated class of people who are into all sorts of immorality, are the ones voting in leaders who reflect what they, I mean, just all that sort of stuff is really incredible. It's just really great. And this is like, this was written probably before the Civil War happened, and he probably finished it around the time of the Civil War. Starting out. It's just an incredible book, and it just really shows, one, how Christ-centered everything was in the founding of our nation, and just how it so quickly just deteriorated not long after, and a lot of that because of the influences of the French Revolution and all that other stuff. Anyways, guys, it was great talking with you, great hanging out with you. It was great to be a part of the live stream again. I hope you guys tune in for more. Be sure to subscribe on all the channels, by the way, especially this one on Rumble. And then that way you can be alerted the next time we go live. But anyway.